좋은 작은 것 같아. 너만 준비돼 있다면.
Welcome to Sex at 10. I'm Rebecca Rosenblat, certified relationship and sexuality therapist and your host, here to answer questions on all things intimate. Whether you're stuck in a relationship dilemma, have issues with your body, trust, trauma, addiction, orientation, or just need a little help with turning up the heat in your bedroom, give us a shout at 1-800-968-7836 and let's chat. Everything's fair game. If you thought about it, we can talk about it. Let's begin with a discussion on sexual avoidance. And to help me with that, we're being joined by an expert in the area, Sari Cooper, who's flown in all the way from the Big Apple. Sari is an ASEC certified sex therapist who's a long-distance sex coach, supervisor, and writer based in New York City. She's been in practice for over 23 years, helping individuals and couples address sexual issues like low sexual desire, out-of-control sexual behaviors, erectile disorder, and different desires amongst couples. So we're indeed very excited to have her joining us tonight to tackle such an important topic. Good evening and welcome.
Thank you.
It feels so good to be doing this in person. We've done it a couple of times over the phone. So thank you for joining us.
I'm excited to be here.
Well, we're going to have lots of fun. Not one, but two sex therapists in house. How can it go wrong, right? Sari, sex is such a primal instinct above and beyond the mating imperative. It's also crucial to bonding and intimacy. Yet our collective conscious has tried to sully it or make it appear less important than it is, even as the media uses it to sell everything from personal items to libations, knowing full well how powerful that instinct is. So I'm very glad that you're going to be highlighting why sex is so important and how sexual avoidance can spell relational suicide in many cases. So let's begin by you sharing some of the main reasons why sex is so crucial.
Well, I would start by saying that sex is touch, and touch is one of the most primitive things we have when we come out of the womb, right? It's the way babies are comforted. And just because we're grown up doesn't mean that yearning inside us doesn't still need the touch in order to calm down. And there's been plenty of research studies to show that people who touch and hug have less stress when they're doing jobs or performances that require a lot of energy and anxiety. So it's healthy, it calms you down. It's also good for your heart.
Yes, there's a paper that just came out today. Actually, I was reading, and the statistics were startling that people who are in healthy relationships that involves a lot of healthy touch, their rate of heart rate is drastically lower. And even if they do have a heart attack, the recovery is incredible. So definitely it's as humans, we're tactile species.
Right, and it's exercise. You know, if you think about your organs, it's part of the cardiovascular system. You need to keep the blood going, to keep it exercising.
You burn calories.
Yeah, right. And I think also the other part of it is bonding, because I think that when people don't touch, they're losing something essential in their relationship. It's a different way of communicating that just gets missed.
That gets missed. I have so many couples, I'm sure you do as well, where you know, if they've had some kind of sexual difficulties and they're restarting, it's the elephant in the room. I say, even if you can just lay naked, skin to skin, you don't know where you end and your partner begins, that itself can be very delightful and bonding.
Right, with no pressure.
No pressure.
With no goal. Right.
Just being there, just being in each other's presence.
Right.
And I also hear that our skin, our hair, everything is the fountain of youth. Everything looks good. So that's an added bonus.
Right.
Viewers, if you're struggling with sexual issues, tonight's a great night to call in to get expert advice. Like I said, not from one, but two sex therapists. So don't be shy. Grab that phone right now and call us. Sari, despite what you've shared, why is it that so many people undermine the importance of sex?
Well, I think you said it in your intro. I think there's the media, which uses sex to sell everything, but then there are the ways people are brought up, which is to feel shame, terrible shame about having sexual feelings, and depending on sort of the culture within which community they grow up in, there is a lot of fear around it. And so I think they're getting the message in their minds, don't bring it up, don't talk about it, while at the same time, you know, not only yearning for it, but, you know, thirsting for it because it's all around them all the time.
Yeah, and there's, I mean, we see literally tens of thousands of images every day that have some sexual connotation. So the desire is there, but bringing it up is difficult, and particularly for females, because of all the slut shaming. A woman may be like horny as hell, but very afraid to say, I want me a little something. Viewers, if you or your partner is having a hard time communicating about sexual issues, please call us for guidance to tackle that. Let's talk about one of the most common issues which comes up, differing desires. As therapists, we know that the person with the lower desire generally calls the shots. If they don't want it, it's not likely to happen, or at the very least, only when they feel like it. So let's discuss the impact that has on the other party or the relationship in general, and the building resentment which can erode the relationship in myriad ways.
Right, and I think the way you said it is, you know, they call the shots. So it's a power struggle that ensues, because if you're the lower libido partner, you know, the other partner, the higher libido partner, keeps trying, makes initiation, you get turned down, they start to feel horrible.
Rejected.
They take it so personally, whereas it may be an outcome of just, that's their natural, you know, libido level, or they're dealing with side effects from medication, or they're depressed. There are plenty of issues that go into it. And what I always say is I try to unthread the behavior with the meaning that you're attributing to it. So let's just look at why this is happening and start
what does
there.
sex mean to you? Because lots of people, they say, if you don't have sex with me, I feel rejected, I feel you don't want me. And sometimes it's, I want you, but I don't want sex. And as lots of times people aren't able to tease that apart. So I'm glad that you suggest that. And also, what exactly does it mean to you? And the party who tries to initiate and it never happens, the rejection cuts so deep that they stop doing that. And that's a really, really painful place to go.
And then if you have two people who are avoiders, right? If the person who's usually the initiator just goes, I can't deal with your rejection anymore, and withdraws and backs up and doesn't initiate anymore, no one's having sex.
Exactly, because the other party thinks, oh, we're okay now. Sex is not an issue.
I guess he or she's not interested.
He or she isn't interested. And one of the things that a lot of times women don't understand is that our cycle isn't always desire, arousal, stimulation, orgasm. Desire and arousal can in fact flip-flop. So a woman may feel, I don't have desire, why in the heck would I want to have sex? But not realizing that maybe either arouse yourself, or we were joking about self-loving in the makeup room just before this, arouse yourself, or ask your partner to maybe, you know, I'm not in the mood, but if you can rouse me, let's see where it can take us. And 9 out of 10 times it does kick in, but lots of times people don't realize that or appreciate that. Viewers, if you're at the receiving end of that painful issue, do call in to discuss your experiences. Sari, the other place that different desires play out is when people want different things, particularly with respect to vanilla versus kink. So can you please discuss a healthy way to negotiate that territory?
Well, I think the first place to start, as you would know, is to say, if we're going to discuss this, can we make a ground rule of no shaming, and no criticism, and no disdain or disgust?
Absolutely.
Because all things being equal, some people like the taste of, you know, I always say, some people like pasta with tomato sauce and some people don't. And you wouldn't criticize them for that.
Right.
So let's
it's just different tastes.
Right.
And one person's ceiling is another man's floor.
Right.
So just having that safety net, because I mean, I've seen it so many times where people would say, I suggested something a little bit, like not way out there, just a little bit out of our general comfort zone and boundaries. And my partner said, ew, or you want me to do what? And they never asked again. And it doesn't mean that the desire has gone away. It's still there.
They were
and it's
shamed.
they were shamed, and it's unfulfilled. And they've stopped talking about it. And a lot of this stuff, I mean, our erotic template, it develops when we're prepubescent as kids. So sometimes people don't even understand, why do you want that? That may be like a favorite flavor. They can't do anything to change it.
Exactly. And it's not related necessarily to trauma. I think that's a big myth that I try to bust, because some people just have an interest
Right. And the fetishes that develop for most people, it's just whatever was going on at that so-called imprinting stage,
Right.
and they just, they can't have one without the other. It just somehow got wired that the two go well together, and it's important to them.
Right.
So other than, suggesting that tease apart what exactly is it, and also be able to have that safety net that we're not going to disapprove, is there any other suggestions that you have? For instance, sometimes people say that when I ask my partner, I'm afraid that I will hurt their ego. They might think that, why don't, and I always say it's about adding things. Don't let them think that what we're doing isn't good enough, but we want to add things.
Right.
But is there a good, warm and fuzzy way of doing it so the other party doesn't feel threatened, they don't feel that they're not good enough, or maybe you're having an affair and you're bringing new things into the bedroom? Is there some
Well,
way
first explaining, I think, maybe where you got into it. And the other part of it would be to start as an elementary level.
Right.
So you're like a beginner. I had a couple where he had already gone to dungeons for several years and done a lot of BDSM play.
He was heavy
and
into
he
scene
was
space.
so excited to take his wife. They were in practice with me, and he said, I really want to take her to the convention. And I said, no, like that is like super advanced. It's like taking someone to a Black Diamond
Right.
hill, skiing. And I
That's
said,
a good analogy.
right? I said, you are going to turn her off. You're going to turn this whole thing around,
It's
and
too
she will.
much.
Too much. I'll say, let's talk about power.
Right.
Let's talk about power
play.
exchange. Do you ever feel like someone's the leader and someone's the follower? I start really basic.
Very
okay.
basic.
So, are there some times that you would like to lead? Would you like him or her to lead?
Right.
Would you like to be the follower?
Gentler touch,
Right.
rougher
Can we start
touch.
with something light? Can you use cloth to do a little
Exactly.
smacking before you get into a flogger?
Heavy duty accoutrement. Even
Right.
in flogger, you can go for suede or
Right.
nubuck. It makes one hell of a noise, but it doesn't leave a mark. But then if you're playing with patent paddles, cat o' nine tails, that can really hurt. So just generally, softly. And I think some of the board games nowadays too, they introduce kink ever so slightly, just gently, elementary. I like that.
Yeah.
So just start slow.
Right.
And build it together. There's also the yes, no, maybe list.
Right.
So that's a good place also to see where the comfort zone lies. And I say maybes is where the magic can happen, because that's just outside of the comfort zone, and that's where negotiation can take place.
I actually, instead of maybe, I replaced it with curious to know more.
That's good.
Because then they can talk
Curious
about
to-
it.
Yeah. So what would it take to bring it into the yes column?
Right.
Absolutely.
And tell me more about it.
Yeah, what is it all about, and what will you get out of it, and just kind of trying it, because I say it's sort of like it's favorite flavor, and you can't make someone change their favorite flavor. We have a caller. Good evening, Dan. What is your question for us tonight?
My question's for Sari.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
It's about premature ejaculation.
Anything specific or just in general?
I find it that I've been ejaculating a little too quickly.
Right. So, it's a practice. I always tell people that this is really not, I actually don't like the name premature ejaculation. I actually think it's a control issue. And just like with other practices in sex, you have to practice gaining control over when you want to go over that edge. And so I always say to people, do get into a practice of a masturbation practice so that you can start going from, in terms of arousal, going from 0 to 9 so quickly. Play in that 5 to 7 out of a 10-point scale, and start and stop, and start and stop. And it takes practice, and practice on your own until you gain a little bit more mastery before you then start practicing with a partner.
Yeah, that's a practice. That's what it's all about. And you can, even when you're passing urine, you can kind of go to the count of 3, control to the count of 3, and then your musculature is also gaining better control.
Right.
And certainly there's other ways too, where there's certain numbing agents that can also help. I say that, if you have some Oragel, you can always kind of put a little dollop right here in the frenulum where it's so powerful,
Right.
and it can kind of slow things down. I hope that helped you out, Dan. Thank you for your call. I have so much more to ask you, but we are running into break, so I'm hoping that you can stick around for the next segment.
Sure.
Because we're going to be talking about sexual avoidance, and a really important topic indeed. We'll be right back. Keep your calls coming, and let's discuss sex, relationships, romance, or whatever else rocks your boat. And keep it locked on Rogers TV, because we have lots more great stuff still ahead, including your calls. So pick up that phone and call so we can connect.